right now to talk about that is Kim Iskyan, who's an expert on these matters. And Kim, it's great to talk to you.
Hi.
All right,
to speak with you, John.
We should mention that Kim is the editor of his website. If we could scroll the prompter back just a little bit. You guys rolled ahead. If we could just back that up, we'll get that on the screen there for Kim so we can get his information there. Kim Iskyan is the editor of S&A Global Contrarian. Right there, a worthy blog to check out here as you consider what to do with your finances. But we're going to talk to Kim about what the implications of all this could be here with Morgan Thompson on Russia. We heard the president last week, Kim, announce a new round of sanctions here. Of course, there are calls for even more sanctions. But what's left here, and what is the most effective way that the president can lean on Vladimir Putin in terms of sanctions?
Well, I think there's a lot left, John. Sanctions so far have really been pretty soft. I think there's a lot of reluctance on the part of the U.S. and even more so on the part of the EU to really try to clamp down on Russia. And part of that is that it's not like Iran, which is really a unit in itself in the global financial system. Russia is very much integrated into the global financial system. So any kind of sanctions, which could be, for example, trying to block the Russian financial sector, Russian banks from being able to send money anywhere else in the world, or it might be some sort of block on imports or exports, or any sort of investment in the Russian oil and gas industry. Anything like this would really hurt European economies, for example, and it would have reverberations throughout the global economy that I don't think a lot of people, and certainly a lot of American policymakers, have really thought through very carefully.
Now, Kim, you've said in the past that sanctions really don't have much effect. Is that because they're not strong enough, or is there something else you would recommend?
Well, I think at this point, short of military interference, which I think everyone agrees, or intervention rather, which I think would be inappropriate and really a bit much. I don't think there's a whole lot more that the West can really do. I think sanctions could be effective, but it might be a question of the West really hurting itself along the way. And I think it's also easy to underestimate how far Vladimir Putin is willing to push this whole thing.
Now, you mentioned something about the West hurting itself. Could these sanctions affect the U.S. stock market?
They could certainly affect the U.S. stock market. They could certainly affect the price of oil, which indirectly affects directly affects the entire American economy, because Russia is one of the world's largest producers of oil. It could certainly affect a lot of international businesses that have a great deal of business going on in Russia. Everything from McDonald's to Caterpillar to pretty much you name your global multinational, and they have operations in Russia. So I think it could really impact the American economy indirectly quite a bit, and it could impact narrow slices of the American economy a lot.
Well, Kim, as we look at this, is there any indication, based on the seriousness of the allegations involved here, that investors, Americans, or maybe global investors would be willing to deal with a period of pain in the short term, to have a longer-term solution, and maybe potentially get rid of, or at least lessen the influence of Vladimir Putin?
That's difficult to tell, John. I would tend to, it's not really my area of focus, but I would tend to doubt that the American consumer is willing to go to the wall to support what's going on, to support Ukraine. I think there are many higher interests in the minds of the American consumer. And I think there's a certain disequilibrium, because for Russia, Ukraine is a red line matter. And it's something that Putin is really willing to push hard. And if the Russian people have to endure a sharp recession,
not exactly
fully prepared.
Not exactly the same situation as the run-up to World War II, where folks were urged to buy war bonds and ration butter and things of that nature. A much different situation. Kim Iskyan, thanks so much for being with us, the editor of the S&A Global Contrarian. Great to be with you.
Super. Thank you, John. Thanks, Marty.
All right, so we turn our attention from the situation in Ukraine to another American moment. This time we look at FDR and the passage of Social Security.
Today, a hope of many years standing is in large part fulfilled.
The Social Security Act of 1935 was the cornerstone of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal agenda, a program designed to ease the burden of old age by providing a continuing income to those 65 and older, benefits to those unemployed, and protections and assistance to disabled children. At the time, the program was limited in scope since the average American's lifespan in 1940 was just 63 years. But in the dark days of the Great Depression, FDR offered comforting words to a nation emerging from the nation's worst economic crisis in its history, the Great Depression. The first Social Security check was issued on January 31st, 1940, to Ida Mae Fuller, who was unmarried. A school teacher and legal secretary, Fuller worked only 3 years under the new Social Security law, earning her a check in the amount of $22.54. Today, the average Social Security recipient receives a monthly check of $1,294, and the law was amended in 1956 to include disability benefits to those who qualify. The program was originally designed as a pay-as-you-go, self-funding trust fund, with equal contributions being made by both the employer as well as the employee, as demonstrated in this 1940 film.
As soon as you get the card, show it to your employer. He'll need it on payday, for he must deduct from your salary 1.5% of your earnings as your share of the cost of Social Security.
The plan remains essentially the same today, but the system has a rocky road ahead. In 1950, 16 employees paid into the Social Security system for every one retiree. Today, 3 workers pay in per retiree, and within 2 decades, just 2 workers will pay to support each retiree. Still, since its beginning, hundreds of millions of Americans have and continue to benefit from the program. For Newsmax TV, I'm Bill Curtis, and